Well, thank you for asking us to present here tonight. I know a couple people at least that are here were at this event and know it pretty well. So it's kind of fun to go back and take a look at what happened on this day. We decided we just wanted to do a case study and take a look at the data. It was one of these days where we just had a severe weather watch and no tornado watch was issued. So it's really interesting to just go back and look at the data, see what we can learn from it. All right, Jessica, next slide. So as Jared was saying, I do live in the Minneapolis area and I have been chasing storms since 2000 in a serious way. Before that, I was always interested in storms, always wanted to see a tornado. I ended up with my BS in chemistry and biomedical science at St. Cloud State, and I also studied meteorology. I took some classes there as well, which is how I met Brad Nelson, who's on this meeting tonight. And also photography has always been my passion, so I studied that as well. And over the years, as the Twister Sisters, I was previously partnered with Peggy Willenberg. We did a lot of different presentations. We're involved with some Skywarn classes and teaching, and we did some work with Fox 9 News for a couple of years. We had a show, the Twister Sisters, on the Women's Entertainment Channel, and we're involved with a couple National Geographic documentaries. So we did a lot over the years and then kind of took a break and stepped away, did other things. And Peggy is out east now, enjoying life out there and not really chasing as much at the moment. So Jessica has joined the team, and now we will be going forward and doing a lot more with the Twister Sisters in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. When you approached me to join the team, I couldn't have been more excited. So I've been studying weather for several years, but been chasing since 2012. Started out learning the high plains here in Colorado, and then progressively I've started to chase more in various areas of the central and high plains and southern plains and all that good stuff. And I was previously a field correspondent for Weather Nation TV for a while, so that was really exciting, getting to really just pack up and leave across the country at a moment's notice to go document the weather. It was kind of a dream job, but kind of hard job to have and raise a kiddo. So I'm kind of stepped back from that kind of stuff, and I'm moving in a new direction with focusing on just chasing and partnering up with Melanie here.
Great. So just to let everyone know who's on this or at this meeting tonight, we do have some new plans for the coming year, including what we're calling a virtual chase team at the moment, doing some virtual ride-alongs, basically helping people. I'm sure most of you know a lot about storms forecasting and chasing, but there are a lot of people out there who have a lot of interest in it, and we just want to help educate people and help them learn how to do some forecasting if they're interested in this field. And so we're going to be teaching some classes, do some case studies and mentoring, and have some giveaways. Anything else you want to mention, Jessica?
I'm just excited about everything that we're going to be doing with just our vision as a team. I think it's going to be great. So do you want to say something about this before I play it?
All right, so we're just going to show a short clip in case you haven't seen the footage, which I'm sure probably most of you have seen somebody's footage from this day, because there's a lot of incredible footage, including Tanner's and Brad's, who I know they're on the call or the meeting here. So yeah, we're just going to show a quick clip to start out talking about today.
Might be a little choppy, but hopefully not.
Yeah, with the Zoom call, the video is a little choppy, but you can always go to YouTube later and watch the whole thing if you want. So as you can see right here, Brad and I were approaching this tornado from the north, actually. We were moving south. So we got to sit and watch it for a while as it moved towards us and just past us. And then we followed behind it, and it was nicely lit by the sun, as those of you who were there were able to witness. Quite an incredible tornado, one of the best of my entire 20 years of chasing, because of the slow movement and how well lit it was with very little rain once we got out of that north side of it. Yeah, just amazing. An amazing day for photography of that storm for sure. So we wanted to first start with just taking a look at damage path, which again, probably a lot of you have seen. You move this little window here. Yeah, it ended up being rated an EF4 at one point in its life cycle. It had a path of 9 miles. It was on the ground for, according to the damage survey here, for 31 minutes from 5:08 until 5:39. And it was only, you know, max width was 650 yards. So it's what a lot of chasers call, and probably meteorologists also, a drill bit tornado, where it had a small width as far as the vortex was concerned, but it had really high wind speeds, getting up to, you know, almost 170 miles per hour based on the damage survey. As you can see, it tracked to the northeast. And yeah, let's keep going. We have a lot of slides to go through. So just taking a look at a couple of the damage photos from the day. These are by Greg from the National Weather Service, Gregory Gust in Grand Forks, and an aerial view. And that previous photo was the worst damage of the day. A house got taken off its foundation and the car ended up in there. So as you can see, that was pretty serious damage. It's a good thing it didn't hit any more, too many more structures anyway. Going, yeah, and then here's a lot of people I have seen have commented that this tornado had one of the most interesting and memorable ground scours, the scar that it left on the earth from its path. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just quickly chat about, I had chased the previous day in southeast Wyoming, and just kind of analyzing the day 2 slight risk initially. There was a 5% tornado risk in central and southern Nebraska. We were seeing just tons of cape and moisture in that area. Looking at Minnesota as well, we're concerned about early morning convection delaying storm initiation until closer to dark, and also concerned with better shear and upper level support being displaced further to the west. So the vertical shear, the better parameters were lagging. You know, initially it looked like they're lagging behind the front. And so there were questions of whether or not the storms would be linear in storm mode and possibly outflow dominant rather than isolated and organized. There was just too much question, too much uncertainty to make the long haul out to Minnesota. So ended up not chasing and actually had to return to Colorado and take care of some other engagements. But some chasers ended up going to Nebraska and chasing the 5%. So that's just a quick look at the initial 6Z day 2 outlook the day before. And then even the SBC kind of hinted and touched on the better shear being displaced and just being concerned about storm mode, outflow dominant storms and, just complexes of storms that were not really isolated or just really outflowy and just not really ideal for isolated storm structures and tornadoes. They don't even mention tornadoes in this outlook, in this particular outlook. No.
Great. So as Jessica was saying, it sounded more like a cold front kind of a day, and based on looking at the models and other things, it just didn't look like it was going to be a big tornado day, essentially. Typically along the cold front, we see more clusters of storms, linear mode, although we can obviously get QLCS systems, which do produce tornadoes. There was shear in the environment. There was a possibility, which is why SBC issued 2% and 5%, kind of back and forth, and eventually that 5% in Minnesota. But really the day before, I wasn't like super excited about this chase, but it was within range of being able to just go out for the day. So I talked to Brad Nelson and we decided to team up on this day and chase together, which was a lot of fun. And in fact, it looked like there could be low up in Canada along the Minnesota border, further up north, but there really wasn't expected to be much for low pressure or that kind of a setup the way it turned out to be the day before in the forecast. So even on the 1730Z day 2, which a lot of us look at as chasers the day before, just to see how it's comparing to our own forecast, SPC mentioned 1 or 2 upscale growing clusters appear possible into Wednesday evening, strong wind gusts and severe hail. They didn't even mention tornadoes in the 1730. So again, concerned about how well the atmosphere would recover after the morning convection that was expected. So as a chaser, I always want to target the initial storms, especially in a situation where they're expected to merge or become linear fairly quickly. we want to be on that storm right away as it initiates. If we expect to see any good structure or a possible brief tornado, it's kind of day it looked like it would be. Keep going. So as you can see, they dropped that 5% down in Nebraska and became just this elongated 2% risk for tornadoes according to the SPC. Because of that boundary that was sitting there, that's where storms were expected to go up along that cold front. Keep going. We don't need this slide. Keep going. And, you know, we always like to look at the HRRR both the day before and the day of, see when the convective allowing models are breaking out precipitation. So the previous day, you could see it looked like something might pop up closer to Nebraska there earlier around 4 o'clock, according to the 18Z run. Keep going onto the next slide. And it definitely looks almost more interesting down in Nebraska as far as at least storm initiation and having a little more to play with down there. However, I wasn't going to be heading to Nebraska for a cold front event. So I'm seeing here, you know, okay, at least the HRRR is showing some convection by 5 o'clock. And it looks like it's a little more central Minnesota than out in western Minnesota, according to these earlier runs. That's just taking a look at how things were looking the day before. So I was thinking of heading out west, a little bit northwest, but I wasn't expecting to be quite as far west as Fergus Falls, at least on the day before. All right.
Good, okay. So just gonna quickly look at some of the upper air analysis. 300 millibars are showing some divergence up here, kind of central western Minnesota, northeastern South Dakota, southeastern North Dakota, winds diverging here, and then moving forward into the 500s, starting to see defluence in the winds, kind of in the exit region of the trough that's moving in. So it's just kind of showing the potential for upward moving air parcels there. And then we have moisture pooling showing up in the 700 millibar layer here. Just kind of starting to see some hints of just a disturbance possible here. And then 850 millibars, starting to see really the moisture advecting northward into Nebraska, Minnesota, southeastern South Dakota. Kind of get a better visualization of that here with the surface analysis at 21Z day of. There's our low pressure system, cold front draped down through South Dakota into central Nebraska, and then kind of a wavy warm front making its way across central Minnesota and northern Wisconsin there. And then really just good moisture being advected northward into central and southern Minnesota, you know, dew points in the low 70s and upper 60s, just, you know, pulling up into the region here. And just a couple composite parameters that, you know, are always just kind of interesting to look at. So we have definitely seeing like bullseye of higher SIGTOR values in this region around 0Z, and also showing that the convective inhibition has largely eroded in the area. So not seeing, you know, capping really limiting storm development here, which was initially a concern the day before as well. And then supercell composite just showing another bullseye here in central Minnesota. And actually, this is 0Z SRH values. 21Z and 18Z actually had higher SRH values in the 0 to 1 kilometer level. So I think they were up to 250, but we're going to look at some sounding data here. So
hey, Jessica.
Yeah.
Can you go back like 3 or 4 slides to the dew point?
Yep.
Look at that 81 dew point in southeast Nebraska. And actually, it was interesting. There was a number of like non-official stations that were reporting upper 70s to near 80 dew points on that day, and that kind of that you know, North Dakota, South Dakota,
Yeah, you can definitely see
Minnesota intersection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I just want to point that out. I think there was some sort of pooling like you mentioned, going on this day that really kind of led to the, the enhanced moisture that was available to the storm.
Exactly. Yeah, I see dew point 79 down here, 73.
Right.
So yeah, definitely ample moisture being advected up into that area.
And while we're on the slide, I just wanted to mention, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Like you said, that high moisture advecting up from the south, and the setup here that we see actually happen, these are actually, the actual surface observations from the day. There's that low that developed along with that warm front from the outflow boundary, warm front type boundary. So that wasn't necessarily expected to be that way. And those are some of the key factors. And what created such a great environment for tornadoes was that great moisture cape with the low and the outflow boundary warm front there. So it definitely turned out to be a more interesting day than expected.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting. I wanted to kind of look at soundings from the upstream environment. I pulled a sounding from Aberdeen from 12Z, and even here you can just see, large cape values, very strong capping inversion at the mid levels here, but dew points already in the low 60s, surface to 1 kilometer SRH values exceeding almost 270 meters squared per second squared, so incredible low level shear. And then surface to 6 kilometer bulk shear of 56 knots, so really strong winds. And then later on, 0Z out of Minneapolis, as you can see here, the cap has eroded, so we have a wide open cap here, and incredible instability from the surface, almost 5,000 joules per kilogram of cape, and mixed layer more along the order of 3,000 joules per kilogram of cape. And then SRH values are a little lower here because we're a little further away from the enhanced convergence of the low there. So, but incredibly high moisture dew points in 70s, low 70s there. So I did just want to kind of show some soundings from the surroundings. And then here's a look at the visible satellite, which really shows you that outflow boundary that is in place from that early morning convection, which serves as a focal point for the enhanced convergence for storms that would later develop in the vicinity of that triple point and meso low right in this region here. So I just want to point that out. And then this is a really fast radar loop, composite radar loop. So I may play it a couple times just so we can get a good idea.
This is the whole day, so you can see the morning convection.
And here, right here, there it goes right there, popped up right there. So I will replay that. I know it's super fast. Last time I did this, I had to go back, and there we go. So here's the morning convection, and then keep your eye right here. It's super fast, right here. Yeah, so there it is. And initial tornado touchdown at 5:08 p.m. So there's a quick loop there. And then
there might be a little delay too if we're watching this on Zoom with the video playing compared to what you're saying, just so everyone knows. But.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Melanie take over on the chase day here, and I think this is a good spot for me to stop my screen share so you can take over and control the slides. Sound good?
Okay, great.
All right.
All right, sharing my screen. Picking up where we left off. Let me just move some things around. Okay. So as Jessica showed, there were some great parameters that ended up coming together on this day to produce tornadoes. And even with that, we still just had a severe thunderstorm watch because not everything looked perfect. All right, so from a chasing perspective, I want to talk about the day. As a chaser, I'm always looking at the SPC outlooks, as well as doing my own forecasting and targeting. And on the 1730Z, they have a 5% tornado risk in Minnesota, but as you can see, it's a little further east. And the 2% even is actually just a little east of where Fergus Falls is and where the tornado touched down. As we know, or many of us know, that the parameters in this area were there, so that's why the risk was issued. However, things can fire a little earlier than expected, and that's what happened on this day. We weren't expecting initiation until a little bit later than it happened, and the storm initiated around 4:30, which is why I believe things happened a little west of where they were expecting it to happen, just on the western edge, which can be typical sometimes, I find, because that's where the storms initiate, to the west and move towards the east usually. So an enhanced risk down in Nebraska looks kind of enticing if you're not looking at just tornadoes, but there was definitely a higher risk in this area for hail and damaging wind, along with some of those storms along the cold front boundary. Excuse me, and this outlook, sorry, they did actually mention the risk of tornadoes. Now they're talking, okay, yep, there could be tornadoes today with the storms that develop. And all right, from a chaser perspective, now Brad and I were talking about our forecast, where are we going to target, and we both agreed we wanted to get on the western edge. We want to be out there before storms initiate, and if that boundary continues to move east, then we just follow along with it. And at this point in time, at the beginning of the day, we still didn't see that low out there. It hadn't developed yet, and we knew we wanted to get out west, a little north, based on our forecasting. So as you can see, the blue line is, if we took the direct route up 94, it would have only taken us about 2.5 hours from our location. So we felt like we had plenty of time to get there. And at one point we had considered actually sitting down to have lunch, and I'm glad we didn't, because we ended up taking a little different indirect route. We felt like getting a little north before we went west. So sometimes we don't want to drive too far west and then have to drive back east. You know, it's always these decisions we're making as a chaser during the day. And of course, always adjusting based on real-time data. So we ended up deciding to take the red route instead. So it took us closer to 3.5 hours to get to Fergus Falls. In the meantime, we're obviously looking at the new rungs, looking at the surface obs, satellite, see how that atmosphere is recovering from the earlier convection. And I'm glad we didn't stop for lunch, because we got there with 5 minutes to spare. As we're driving, we're looking at surface obs, and I noticed at around 2 o'clock, I was seeing, it looked like a little circulation out here by the hump of Minnesota, like a little meso low was developing, and that wasn't very obvious earlier in the day. And we've got that outflow boundary from earlier convection, and the atmosphere was clearing out. There was insulation going on. We were still concerned even before we left the cities, if the clouds were going to clear, you know, how's the atmosphere going to recover? That's always a question on these days. Is that outflow boundary going to help us, or is that cold pool of air going to hurt us? Just have to keep going and see how the day progresses. So this is around 2 o'clock. You can see that low shaping up around 4 o'clock, right before the storm, probably right as that storm was beginning to initiate. Right there at Fergus Falls, we have calm wind. It's almost like the low is really close to Fergus Falls at this point in time. Along with, you know, the triple point, we've got the cold front south of that, and then the outflow boundary, warm front boundary. So the Storm Prediction Center came out with their mesoscale discussion at 3 o'clock and confirmed pretty much what we were looking at, the surface obs. And here it's always fun to look at their analysis and see how they draw in the boundary. That outflow, modified outflow boundary looks very interesting, how curvy it is. But we just knew we wanted to be by that low, and it's 3 o'clock. The low was still pretty far west, and every time I recall, every time looking at the HRRR, we, you know, I'll look at every run like most of us do, just to see how it thinks convection will happen. And I have found, to be honest with you, as I look at it throughout the day, obviously the closer we get to initiation, oftentimes the more accurate the run gets, which makes sense. But I don't always, you know, none of us can trust the models completely, and we have to go by what we're seeing in the atmosphere. Where is boundary? Where is that low? Where, you know, how does satellite look? But it's always good, you know, the models are taking into account all the current data and outputting what they think is going to happen. So on this day, the HRRR did keep initiating storms with each run a little further west. And I don't have any of the runs. I didn't save them or anything or look them up, but it just, I remember every time it was a little further west. So we kept deciding to keep going west, because we weren't sure if we wanted to position and just wait a little bit further east as the system moved closer towards us. But the way it looked like things might develop a little earlier than we originally expected. So we kept going west out towards that low. And they finally issued, Storm Protection Center, well, National Weather Service, whatever, issued a severe thunderstorm watch, 4 p.m. And as a chaser, we're excited when we see the MD and when we see the watch come out, but not quite as excited when it's just a severe watch, not a tornado watch. However, we were still just, you know, hopeful we'd see some interesting structure on the storms at least. And Brad and I arrived in Fergus Falls at around 4 o'clock, you know, maybe closer to 4:30. And as we pulled up to the gas station, here's the parking lot of the gas station, 4:32 p.m. When we got there just a few minutes earlier, we didn't see much in the sky. As you can see, it's not the best visibility on this day. There were still there's a lot of moisture in the air for one thing, so a little more haze, some other, you know, low-level clouds around. But we stopped to get gas, and we're just like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. You know, you're always wondering, is this where I should be? Do we need to position somewhere else? And on this day, I remember I said, well, let's just, you know, go to the bathroom, get some food and gas, and I bet something's going to pop up right when we get back. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, I looked at satellite, and as you could see on that previous slide, here's just a loop I was able to find of the day, how the storm progressed. So on satellite, you could see that tower going up. And when I looked out the window, or actually it was behind the building. So we looked around the building and there it was. There's the cumulonimbus, the tower growing, exploding rather, 4:32. By 4:37, we were on the road driving towards it. Wasn't too far away from us, thank goodness, because it didn't take long to go tornadic. On radar, this is a composite image, as you can see, but here you can see where the radar sites are, and that this storm went up in a radar hole, which is important because on days like this, when the storm is somewhat far from radar, we can't see the low levels very well. It's not, doesn't look quite as good on radar, so it's important for spotters and chasers to call in any reports based on what they're seeing real time. We did make a point. Brad called in the very first funnel we saw, which was so quick after that storm went up. And so on radar, it looks like this tiny green little dot. And I've had this experience before, where you see that little green dot and you know that's it, that's the storm. That's the one, especially on this day. It's right by the low, right on the triple point, and it's the first storm of the day. We want to get on it before more storms go up and everything merges and becomes less interesting. So we were there, luckily, just on time. This is what radar looked like by 5:26 p.m. as the tornado was on the ground. It was on the ground again till 5:39 p.m. So here it's between Dalton and Ashby. As you can see, I mean, you can see the rotation. I mean, you can see on the velocity, you can see the couplet. So you could at least see at this point what was happening on the radar. You could see that circulation, but you don't see much of a hook echo on the reflectivity. And I know Jessica said to me the other day, she said, well, I wonder what that would have looked like if it had been closer to a radar site. Might have looked a lot more interesting. And here is the first wall cloud. Brad and I were watching. We were coming in from the north. So we stopped, and since the storm was moving northeast actually, we decided to wait and let it come a little closer to us, thinking we had some time. I mean, the storm had just gone up, and usually you know, it can take a good hour for a storm to develop and become tornadic, but this one happened quickly. So we're watching this wall cloud, and I remember posting this picture on Facebook. I try to report real-time images and also tag the Weather Service while I'm doing it. I remember someone commented, wow, that's gonna happen. Look at how it looks so much like a bowl. You can just see the rotation. It's not the best structure, to be honest. It doesn't look the most interesting, but it's got kind of a bowl shape to it. Oh, I'm gonna play to move this. All right. So the first funnel was just this little funnel, and that's when Brad called it in. Let the Weather Service know that it was putting down a funnel already. And I know they got several reports from chasers and spotters out there, which was really great. And it really helped a lot to be able to issue those warnings. Oh, sorry. All right. And so Brad and I, we moved a little closer, still to the north of this tornado. Brad took this picture. Thanks, Brad. As you can see, we were in the rain because we're on the north side. Typically, that's the case. Not always, but you might get a little more rain on the north versus south side. So, yep. Then this is the tornado we were looking at while I was under the umbrella as it's moving, just in the beginning stages here, coming down. And it was pretty low contrast because we were in the rain. Now we got a little closer, and as that tornado was coming towards us and we were going towards it, we stopped. It had already crossed the road, still moving northeast. And this is that one, probably at just close to its strongest point. As you can see, a lot of debris. Unfortunately, it hit that machine shop. One person died in this storm. Just another image from our day, our chasing. And here's Brad. It was with his 100th tornado. So congratulations, Brad. What a day to have your 100th tornado. Brad's been chasing a while as well and working as a meteorologist.
Thanks, Mel.
Anything you want to say, Brad, since you're here?
No, it's great. I love it.
I think that's like one of the best pictures I've seen of someone in front of a tornado.
Just like,
I mean, almost,
right, just like palpable joy. Like, look at this.
right, and just the lighting. I mean, it's incredibly well lit. Once we were behind that storm and more on the south side of it, it was much better lit. And there's me, one of the few pictures of myself in front of a tornado. Thanks to Brad for taking this picture. So we realized we had to keep moving, even though this storm was moving slow, very slow. It took, 31 minutes to go 9 miles. I haven't done the calculation, but it was moving slow. And, but it's still, when you're chasing, obviously the roads don't go exactly the way the tornado does. So Brad kept saying, come on, Mel, we have to go, we have to go. And I kept saying, no, I need a little more tripoded footage of this storm because it was so amazing. And with a tornado, you never know when it's going to dissipate. Usually tornadoes last a minute or less, and they're just so brief. You have to be there at exactly the right time. You don't have much time to get any pictures or video. In this case, it was a lot different. But I still didn't know, okay, what if we get in the car and it disappears? So it's kind of a game of how long do I sit here and when do I move? And we kept up with it for most of its life, but we were not as close as some other people who had some incredibly close footage of this slow moving tornado. Just another shot between the trees. And actually, this is as it was moving over water. And on this day, many people saw the rainbow with the tornado, which is, as a chaser, it's one of those dream shots you think of getting sometime, a rainbow with the tornado, not to mention such a nicely lit tornado. And this was the rope out stage, which is a pretty cool shot, as you can see at the top of the image. This tiny little rope, this tiny little vortex right here, I just think is super cool. I kind of wish I had a little bit wider view of it to see a little more of that, but it was still a nice rope out. And at the end of the day, I know Tanner's on the call too. Brad and I ended up right next to Tanner, just sitting there watching this. It didn't look like it was moving much, but it was still moving away from us. And it was fun to just see the entire structure of the storm as well. I know one person had mentioned to me how this updraft didn't look very mature, and yet you had this incredible tornado. I don't have much to comment about that, but it was an interesting observation, because when I look at it, I just see a really robust, nice updraft, and I can't see the top of the storm in this shot, the anvil, but it wasn't clearly, you know, one of the most intense, really tall supercells that I've seen. I guess it doesn't look quite as robust as others I've seen, but that tornado was pretty strong. We had a lot of that low-level shear, which is very critical in tornado genesis. And thanks to the outflow boundary and the triple point and all that moisture, just so much in place for a tornado. You know, when I look at this picture, when that person made the comment, I actually think about like low top supercells. That kind of a look. That's how this image kind of looks to me when you see some of those photos. This is towards the end of its life cycle. All right. Now we're going to show just a tiny bit of video for entertainment value, even though it's going to be a little choppy. This is when the rainbow was right next to the tornado, and some of the most incredible motion I've seen in a tornado. Again, that drill bit. And this clip is actually sped up a little bit, but it was moving really quickly. And this clip is definitely sped up because we were sitting there so long watching this tornado. We almost got bored. so to watch the video of this tornado, like 10 minutes of it just sitting in the field, I'm like, okay, yeah, I've seen enough. So speeding it up makes it a little more interesting. But this, yeah, here's the rope out. Boom, there it goes. And then the wider view, which I just love. I love watching the whole storm and that rising ocean, the updraft. Just a classic, kind of like perfect view right there. Yeah. Any comments about this video?
So
Brad?
yeah, so Melanie, in my opinion, it's the angle of the shot, right?
Uh-huh.
You can see even right here towards the end, I think you're missing the main updraft that's still into that storm. You're catching a lot of the you know, a lot of the rear flank updrafts that are kind of going up at that time. So even here, like you can see, there's definitely a main updraft
right
into that storm. So I think it's the angle of the shot, really. This was definitely not a low topped, you know, supercell by any means.
I don't think it was a low top supercell. It just had that look, like
Yeah, it did. Yeah, for sure. In that shot.
Yeah, that's why that person commented that way. And I agree. I felt like I couldn't see the whole storm in this shot. Like I mentioned, you know, you can't really see the whole thing, but it has that look. So I think that's why someone was making that comment about how it looks like that updraft's not very mature, but that's not, like you said, the main updraft.
Yeah, but how many times do you see like a rain-free tornado, you know, base like that just kind of you know,
this is the
that's
type
amazing.
These are the types of storms that we are more likely to see in Colorado because of our drier climate here. So this is a lot more like my first tornado was very much like this, very rain-free, very kind of a skinny updraft, not the most robust you've ever seen, but just those are honestly, they can be the most photogenic tornadoes. I mean, as you can clearly see.
Right, and because of all that moisture in the air, you know, it's hard to see all of the detail on this day. But I'm curious, Brad, or anyone, do you recall what the echo tops were? What was the height? I forgot. I was going to look that up, and I didn't do that. If I could find that information somewhere, I was just curious. But nope, no comment. Okay.
Nope. I don't remember the echo tops. But
I want to say it was around 45,000, but I
Okay, that's pretty good.
all right,
Yeah.
well,
JT had a question in the
Average.
comments in the chat.
yeah,
He's
just
asking
wondering if
for
there was any satellite tornadoes,
Yeah.
which I don't
Any stat-
recall seeing any.
I don't recall. Yeah.
Yeah.
There.
There's one point in a couple of people's different footage, it really looks like it tried to make one. I didn't catch it in person, but I saw it in a couple of different places.
Yeah, and I would admit, upon years of chasing, like any strong tornado EF3 plus,
Mm-hmm.
I would think it's almost going to try to make a satellite tornado. Seriously. So if you get a strong tornado, it's almost always going to have that outer circulation type tornado that's rotating around the mesocyclone that you got to watch out for. I mean, and a strong, like example, this is a classic example. We might have not even seen it coming. I mean,
Well,
one of those.
right. Yeah. That's important to, as they say, keep your head on a swivel and watch for those satellites. In this case, I mean, when we were to the north, I would be concerned as it got closer to us when we were close. But then when we were behind it, the sun was shining on us, and the meso was not really right over us at some point. So at that point, I wasn't too concerned since we weren't even right under it. But there were definitely chasers who were right under it and should definitely keep an eye out for that. I don't know. What do you think?
Who are you asking?
Anyway, Brad was.
I think Brad hit it on the nose. I mean, most of the research shows that, there's counter circulations and other things going around a strong circulation like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if people did see some, brief satellite funnels or something from a different angle that maybe none of us saw.
Right. Yeah, because we were behind it. Brad and I were behind it. So if someone was in front of it or at a different angle, perhaps they would have seen something else. And obviously we have seen a lot of that footage also. And I have not heard of a satellite, at least not a satellite touchdown. Perhaps there was a circulation at some point. All right, here is the just reviewing what happened on this day. You can see not only did we have tornadoes in Minnesota, which, by the way, with the QLCS that came through earlier in the day, the early convection, there were 3 tornadoes near Fergus Falls. This is something I was not aware of because I wasn't watching, I guess, to see exactly what the damage survey was from earlier in the day. However, there was one tornado. There were 2 EF1s and an EF2. And one of the EF1s actually came very close to the airport at Fergus Falls. So Gregory Gust was out there doing damage surveys of the tornadoes from that morning when this storm came through and produced the tornado in the same area. He was already out there doing surveys, which I thought was just fascinating. So clearly, not only was it that outflow boundary and low, there were parameters in place, that shear, the moisture, other things in place that helped create tornadoes earlier in the day as well, with a different type of system, the QLCS. And there, I should mention just quickly, there were tornadoes that did touch down in Nebraska. I believe Mike Umscheid saw one of them, and it was, he said, described it as a landspout type tornado. So
Do you want to answer? Do you want to answer a question from James real quick?
Sure, yeah, I guess I don't see what the questions are. Okay.
Maybe it's because you're full screen, but he just says he hasn't chased yet in his 10 plus years out there. So general question, what is considered a safe distance from the center of circulation to chase a tornado from? I think that depends on who you ask.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead and answer what you think, Jessica.
I just think it just depends on your experience level and your knowledge level and your comfort level. I mean, if you're very experienced, and I hesitate to even say this because even the most experienced chasers can find themselves in unpredictable situations because weather is an unpredictable phenomena. So, I mean, El Reno is a perfect example of that. You have some of the most experienced chasers in the field getting caught off guard by a tornado that suddenly changes directions, accelerates, and expands at the same time. So I think it's better to play a safe distance, but ultimately that decision is really up to that individual chaser's comfort level and what risks they're willing to take really out in the field. So I guess as long as they're just only putting themselves at risk, I mean, they can do what they want, but I tend to keep a fairly safe distance, but I've had some close calls myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say over the years, it took some time for me to feel safe and a little more confident about how I'm positioning around the tornado. However, as we all know, as Jessica mentioned, it can change very quickly, as a lot of chasers found in El Reno. So and that tornado in El Reno expanded to what, 2.6 miles wide within a minute or something. It was just crazy. So knowing that really reminds us as chasers to play it a little safer, to be a little more aware of the near storm environment, what's happening right above us, because on days like that, you can be in a very bad situation very quickly. On a day like this Dalton day, as I mentioned, when we were behind it and it was moving away from us, I felt safer. I felt safer in that situation because I had to catch up to it. Had I been, I mean, at one point we were to the north of it, and that's a little more dangerous to be, well, it depends how it's moving, but it was moving northeast. So if you're in the path, it's a lot more dangerous. It's better to be out of the path. And even though we knew it was moving northeast, it could have shifted and come north right towards us. So that's not the best situation to be in. You definitely want to be usually to the south if it's moving in a northward type direction. Or so we like to sometimes be a little ahead of it and not be right behind it, just to get a better visual depending on the storm and the day. I would say, you know, I think I feel okay within about a half a mile from a tornado. I think we were a little closer at one point on this day. And somehow I didn't feel nervous, which maybe I should have, because I could have been in a dangerous situation at one point. So it does, like Jess said, it depends. It depends on experience, depends on the storm, depends on a lot of things. So definitely playing it safe is a lot better, and not being in the path of the tornado is another key factor. So you really need to understand the movement, watch the radar, understand what you're doing first of all before you're even putting yourself in that situation.
Yeah, situational awareness is key for navigating around storms safely. So that's definitely huge. Definitely knowing what's going on, what you're looking at, and doing the stupid check, as they call it. You know, always, like you said, keep your head on a swivel. Always be analyzing the environment around you. Don't be focused on just one area of rotation, because there could be more.
Right, and sometimes being with a chase partner can help us be more aware of our situation, because we can get mesmerized by the tornado. And I've been in that situation, having it move directly towards us while I'm filming on a tripod, and it's mesmerizing and incredible. My partner is like, we gotta go, it's coming right for us. So
reality check.
It can help to have a partner, especially if you're new at it. All right, I think we'll go over some key factors of this day in analyzing, taking a look at the data from the day and how the forecast had looked ahead of time and just what happened. I know I've talked to a lot of chasers who weren't in Minnesota and wish they had been. I've been really curious. What can they learn from this day that they can recognize in the future? Because pattern recognition is important when deciding where your target is or whether or not it's worth driving to Minnesota for the chase. So one of the things, as we already mentioned, the magic of the outflow boundary. It was magical this day. It definitely helped. It was one of the key factors that helped create that low level shear and just a better environment, or better low level shear, better environment for tornadic storms. And Jessica, do you want to talk about some of the factors?
Yeah, you know, that question of whether the atmosphere would recover, you know, quickly enough from that morning convection, it was such a conditional thing, you know, just looking at analyzing models the day before, we were, you know, concerned. We thought, well, I'm concerned that the atmosphere won't recover quickly enough for storms to initiate early enough to really get a good shot at a tornado before dark. But I mean, that's really, those are the types of details that are really just impossible to resolve the day before. Really, it's only the day of, when you're looking at mesoanalysis and you're looking at satellite, that you're starting to see the clearing, you're starting to see that outflow boundary come into place, and you're realizing, okay, the atmosphere is ready. I mean, it's primed, and that low is moving in, and you see that first storm pop, like you said, Melanie, it's like go time. And so I think it's just one of those things where over-reliance on the models can sometimes cause you to regret not chasing a certain setup. But, you know, had it been closer to me, I probably would have chased it, but I had other things going on. But it was, you know, it was one of those, it was a big gamble. And most chasers that chased the day before did not make the gamble all the way to Minnesota, because it was so questionable about that, you know, whether the atmosphere could recover quickly enough or not. A lot of folks just played it safe and chased in Nebraska and got some tornadoes down there, but obviously nothing compared to the Ashby tornado. So it was, everyone was getting tornadoes in Nebraska, or, you know, folks were getting tornadoes in Nebraska and couldn't have cared less because of what was happening in Minnesota. They're like, well, I guess we should have gambled on it. But again, those smaller details are harder to resolve the day before, and I think that's challenging. So definitely not over relying on the models, and looking at mesoanalysis and satellite and, you know, observed soundings the day of can really give you a lot better kind of expectation of how the day could evolve.
Right, and when you say don't over rely on the models. Earlier I was thinking about this, and I was thinking sometimes over analyzing can also be a problem, because first of all, the models are not real-time data. So I know a lot of people tend to really dig in and analyze. I like to analyze too, but there are definitely some key things I look at. And if there's a possibility of something interesting happening, especially we knew there was a slight chance of a tornado from storms that would develop. Didn't look great, but there was a possibility. And how many days have you been out there? You know, it looks like a great day, but darn, that those clouds just won't go away. And the models don't always pick up on that, if the clouds are going to clear out in time or not, or the exact timing of that convective system moving through and then leaving an outflow boundary. Where is that outflow boundary going to be exactly a few hours from now? So even though we're looking at models the day before, you know, overanalyzing and making that decision because it doesn't look like the best setup, you know, and so you decide to stay home, but then you might regret it. It's like people have been saying, you got to be out there. You just got to go. You just got to go for everything, really, if you want to end up seeing something like this, especially on a day that it doesn't look like it's necessarily going to happen. There wasn't even a tornado watch on this day. But as the day progressed, Brad and I felt a lot more confident about how things were coming together with that low triple point. It was like all that moisture, the clouds clearing out, was just like, oh, the closer it got, the more excited we got. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the day looks great and there's a tornado watch, but that cap just doesn't break. So, you know, the atmosphere is dynamic. It's always changing. We can't predicted exactly. We can definitely get a good idea, but we can never know exactly what's going to happen until it happens.
Yep, that satellite imagery from the morning of definitely would have been a big indicator that, okay, we have some potential for more excitement today than we initially anticipated.
And I definitely learned on this chase not to stop for a sit-down lunch. Had we done that, we would have missed the show. So I would get to your target first and then sit down for lunch.
Yeah,
And
I've definitely been in that situation before where I lingered a little bit too long at a gas station or a restaurant, or maybe I was slow moving out of my hotel that morning or something, and I was definitely late to the game. So don't do that.
another key about this day, as we mentioned, the reports were very critical from spotters and chasers. So don't forget to call in reports to your National Weather Service so they know what's happening real time and can issue warnings as needed.
Yeah, especially a day like that when there's not that many chasers or spotters on it. It becomes that much more important because, I mean, on chases where there's a million people out there chasing and everyone is reporting on it, you don't really need to worry as much. But again, there weren't that many people on these storms, so it was that much more critical for those reports.
So Brad, if you're still here, I'm curious if you have any extra thoughts you want to contribute.
Yeah, I'm here watching my kids and having them do their thing. But yeah, no, it was an incredible day. You're right, but everything was it was a mesoscale kind of day. I would say leading up to it, really kind of a freak kind of. It was kind of a freak kind of thing that storm developed in the warm sector. Ahead of the triple point. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to have that a single cell like that produce a tornado, you don't get that very often. That's not something you forecast. So, that was definitely special. I mean, obviously, Melanie, we knew there could be storms on the triple point and the warm front, but we had to be there in Fergus Falls, and it was just, I don't know, it was a weird day, believe me. It was not something was that one of those things where we were like, oh yeah, we knew exactly where to go, and we're gonna go there and we're gonna see this EF4 tornado kind of thing. It was kind of a freak day. So I don't know, good analysis, good overview, and I really appreciate your time and going over things here. This is great. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate your insights as well.
Yeah, we're happy to have been able to give this presentation, and as painful as it was for me to miss this incredible tornado, I love digging into these case studies and really digging into the parameters because, like you said, Melanie, being able to recognize the patterns for a future event like this. I don't want to miss another one of these events. You know what I mean? It was a very painful one to watch from home.
Oh, I have one more screen to share. Is that okay?
Oh, you were done, so.
Yeah, almost. We are done. I just wanted to, there we go. Here's our information in case anyone would like to contact us. That's it. And yeah, you can write to us, info@twistersisters.com. We still have calendars left for those of you who like calendars for your wall or office. And you get a special discount for 25% off using the code TCMETS on our website, twistersisters.com. You can find the calendar. You'd enter the code at checkout. So we still have them left. If anybody needs one, you can just let me know. And are there any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a couple comments. I'm one of the forecasters up at the Duluth office. So it was interesting seeing the case study on this event because I was more focused on the Brainerd one. I was on midnight shifts when that happened. I walked in the door and I had seen some of the media coverage about Dalton, which was concerning to me because I have family that lives on the southeast side of Stalker Lake, just northeast of Dalton. So I hadn't paid much attention to what was going on. And then to come in and see that we had one out by Brainerd was just kind of, that just stole all my focus. So it was, thank you. I can't talk today. The point, what I'm trying to say is just thanks for showing this. A lot of good information there, and stuff I hadn't seen yet, and I was more focused on Brainerd. I saw a couple of the graphics I made for the Duluth website made it into your program, so I appreciate that you use that because now I know people are looking at the stuff I make on the website.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Melanie, do you want to answer this question from Holden? Because this is the heated debate. Do we call it Ashby or Dalton?
I go back and forth.
No, it's totally Dalton. It's totally near Dalton.
it's
Come on. I've measured.
You measured, okay. All right, that's official then. That's official.
No, I'm probably wrong, but you know.
Which county do you want to call it in primarily then?
What was that?
Which county, I'm wondering, does Brad want to call
Oh,
it?
which county?
Because it was in 2 different counties.
Yep.
And it looked like it literally split the
Hey,
difference.
Brad, your mic's off.
Yeah, it was kind of funny watching them juggle down there.
It's exactly between 2 cities. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it split the
Yeah.
difference.
It's a
between
tale of 2 cities. That's what we'll call it.
Yeah.
Just the Ashby Dalton tornado.
There you go.
Still, it formed closer to Dalton.
Stop making sense, Tanner.
Dalton Ashby tornado.
You and your logic.
You and your like profound logic, Tanner.
That's great.
Ashby Dalton. That's just too long.
Too many words.
Well, I think Melanie, you blew up a photo and put it on your wall. I blew up a photo of that event and put it on my wall. I mean,
I have a photo as well. It's right there on my wall.
Yeah.
seriously, I mean, how do you take one event and put it into one chaser's, dream, kind of like, this is it. This is my top 5 or top 1. I'm going to put this on my wall. I mean, this is a big deal. You know what I mean? This doesn't happen very often. You don't get a photogenic EF4 tornado with sun shining on it and just beautiful contrast. How do you get that? You don't get that very often. I think it's important to mention that you don't, and my kids are having a good time back here, but it's important to mention that you don't, this is a very rare thing in any part of the world. And yet it happened in our backyard in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, or near Dalton or Ashby. And it's amazing to think of that you get such a strong, violent, photogenic tornado that occurred in a perfect environment in our neck of the woods. I mean, that's what it came down to, really. So, yeah, really, really, really cool. It's unfortunate, that Mr. Nelson died, and we had one, fatality from that. And but what do you do? I mean, but still, it was incredible. Thank you for the presentation. It's great.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, it was definitely a rare day. I mean, as a chaser, you sometimes forget about that, how rare it really is. And, also it's what keeps us going back out because it is so rare and it's a challenge every time something different happens. So it's always fun to learn from the experience, whether it was a day like this or if it was a bust on a day that looked amazing. And I know you mentioned that one person died, I feel like there's something to learn from that as well. As I understand that this person, along with their friend, were watching the tornado come towards them and filming it on their phone. At least one person was, and didn't realize it was coming straight at them until it was a little too late. And one person chose to take shelter in one location inside a building, I believe, and the other person went underneath the tractor. And their vehicle was actually sitting right next to them. Had they known that tornado was coming right towards them, or didn't get caught up in the moment, it's possible they could have driven away from it to try to escape it if they didn't have proper shelter. Not that I'm saying recommending this, don't take my recommendations. I'm just saying something to think about when people do unfortunately get caught up in these events and lose their life. What can we learn from it? There are lots of things over the years we have learned. And I think in this day and age, that brings in a new element, the phone, and how everybody has a video and a camera, and it's a little more sensationalized and it's exciting rather than being scared of the tornado. Some people don't see it that way and forget that it is very dangerous. So to pay attention and figure out where your best shelter is.
Yeah, it's
what?
tornado warnings are just one of those things where most of the time in Minnesota, you see a tornado, it's going to be in some murky mess. And so those are the situations where, yeah, you just need to seek shelter. In this case, where, my gosh, you could see this thing from 20, 30 miles away, you have to kind of use some common sense and just tell yourself, am I better off, in this workshop, or am I better off getting in my car and moving, 100 yards away would have saved the guy's life, really. So you have to gauge your own safety, and the same stuff we teach the spotters all the time too. So
Exactly.
Well, we don't want to end on a sad note. I appreciate you having us here to talk about this day. It was exciting and fun to review the data and learn what we can from it, and also remind ourselves that I saw John Wetter post this quote. Was it Chuck Doswell and somebody else? A happy little mesoscale accident.
I love that.
So you just don't always know. It's not everything is as predictable as we'd like it to be.
You won't know if you're not there.
for sure. Well, thank you, Jessica and Melanie. Really appreciate you doing the presentation tonight. I put your thank you gifts as speakers in the mail today.
Oh, thank you.
We'll be seeing those by the weekend, I would say, unless the Postal Service gets funding cut or something before then. So
We sure appreciate that very much. I wasn't expecting anything, but that's appreciated.